So we're rescuing people who have been trafficked and who have made contact with their family, or their family has realized that they were trafficked and contacted us saying, please help. So normally a call comes, someone has been trafficked, or if we're lucky, is still being trafficked and hasn't crossed that border yet, hasn't been harmed yet. We gather the evidence that we have to work out where they are. We have people who will then go to their location. If we can call on the police to intervene, then we certainly do. But if we can't, or if there's just not enough time, we set up an escape. So we don't go kicking down doors and, busting in and, we don't have guns, nothing like this. When everything goes well, the rescue will conclude with us having a car and being kind of, parked outside the house or the building where this woman is kept, communicating with her saying, when you have a chance, run. And we're outside. And she'll run and jump in the car and we'll take off. So it's about setting up an escape, because even trafficked women may have some degree of freedom. I mean, especially if they've been trafficked for some months or years, they'll need to go to the market, or even if they're being held in a brothel, they need to go and get their nails done or get their hair done. So there are these moments of vulnerabilities that we exploit where right now, no one's watching. Okay, now we go. We've done rescues where we've been able to find that person and bring them home on the same day that we got the call. And there are rescues that have taken a year, depending on how complex it is to find them.
Hello everyone, my name is Din Long and welcome to the podcast Lifeline. In this podcast, I will interview people who are having a positive impact in their community and have a strong message that deserves to be shared. We will dive deeper into their journey becoming a change maker, and hopefully you can take away some insights for your own journey. And please do subscribe to Lifeline on YouTube, Apple Podcast, or any platform that you are using. And also you can share this episode with your friends if you like it. It's really what helps me the most. In today's episode, you will meet Michael Brosowski, who is co-founder and co-CEO of Blue Dragon Children's Foundation. Him and his team at Blue Dragon are providing exceptional care to street kids in Vietnam, with the dream that every street kid has someone taking care of them. They started supporting street kids back in 2002 to lift them out of poverty and to send them back to school. When they realized that street kids were also a vulnerable target for human trafficking, they embarked on a journey to fight trafficking and rescue trafficked people in Vietnam. Since 2002, Blue Dragon has had an enormous impact and has rescued 1,049 people from trafficking, sent 5,739 kids back to school and training, placed 359 teens in job, served 621,193 meals, built 210 homes for families, obtained legal papers for 13,518 people, and much more. Michael shares how his childhood shaped his willingness to help other people, how he started this 20-year journey by teaching English to street kids in Hanoi with a group of volunteers, and how Blue Dragon has evolved over the years with now more than 100 staff dedicated to their purpose. We also discuss his initial career as an English as a second language teacher, his love for Vietnam, and his advice to everyone who wants to make a change. Just start with what you are good at with other people. You will love this episode. This episode is amazing. We go in depth into what Blue Dragon is, how they operate, what is their dream. So if you enjoy it, please share with your friends so that more people can know about the work of Blue Dragon. And of course, if there is any way you can support them, go ahead. So enjoy this episode and see you in 90 minutes. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much, Michael. I always start by some random stuff where I just share a bit how I know you, how I know your organization in this context, and why I decided as well that I wanted to speak about all of what Blue Dragon is doing about, rescuing children in crisis throughout Vietnam. I got to know you in 2018 from my friend Amy, who was working with Blue Dragon. And since basically, it's an issue that you are working with Blue Dragon, especially on the angle of human trafficking that I don't know much about, but I always had it in mind. And then one day I did the Hazang Loop with some friends, and we met some locals who were sharing a bit, that some kids have disappeared, a bit about the reality about this. And then I immediately connected from what I heard about Blue Dragon. And since then, I cannot stop thinking. It doesn't leave my mind. I know it's an issue that exists and that I don't know much about, but I know it exists. I know through all the stories that you share with Blue Dragon. So yeah, I think for me, I really wanted to invite you, someone from Blue Dragon, to share a bit more. I was a bit stressed to invite you, to be honest. I was like, oh, I'll be so busy. But then, yeah, you were so chill on the email. So it made me more confident. But yeah, that's a bit the context. And I always start, if you want to introduce yourself, where you are calling now, or just, anything that you'd like to share to kickstart.
Sure. And I can't believe you were stressed about asking me that. I was really happy to get your message. Blue Dragon started, back in 2002, 2003. And when it was starting, I had no idea what I was doing. Absolutely none. And I knew it as well. And at that time, when I was going around saying that I was going to start this thing, there were people who were really supportive and people who were really dismissive. And, that's always lived with me. So when I get an email from someone who is trying something creative, doing something a bit cool, I'll always respond. Because I know what it's like to be dismissed by someone who thinks they're too big for you or too good for you. That's not me. No, I'm speaking to you from Hanoi. I've lived here in Vietnam since 2002. So actually, at the time that we're talking, I'm coming up to 20 years in Vietnam, which surprises me as much as anybody. But I grew up in Australia. I was born in Sydney, and then when I was about 12, my family left the city, and we went to live on a block of land in northwestern New South Wales. And this was it was 30 kilometers to get to school every morning. And for my senior school, it was a 60-kilometer trip each way. So this was a hard life. And when we first moved there too, there was no house on the land. There was no electricity, not even running water. And so I come to Vietnam with, I guess, a bit of an unusual background. And in that I grew up in quite a bit of disadvantage myself. And in starting Blue Dragon, it was just a way to help kids out, kids who were basically just like me. So that's how I got to be where I am. A little bit of accident and serendipity, a lot of good fortune along the way.
Cool. And actually, it's great that you speak about your childhood, because I try to do a lifeline, hence the name of the podcast. But really, I always start with the childhood, just trying to understand, where did people grow up? How was the childhood? Maybe could you elaborate a bit, this part of your life, your childhood as well? What were your childhood dreams back then, if you had any?
Yeah. Well, look, before I moved out of Sydney, I lived in a very industrial part of the city. My parents worked in factories. But we were well off, in a way. We had a home and we never went hungry, nothing like that. Moving up to the countryside as we did was almost like a step into poverty. Looking back, it was a very odd thing to do. And in part, I'm very glad that we did it, because it shaped a lot of who I am. But it was also very hard, being so isolated from our house. You couldn't see anybody else. There was, there were no neighbors. In fact, I remember when a car drove past, we would all like run to the window to see, well, who's that? Who's driving past? You could go a week and no one drove past. So it was very isolating. And I grew up with really mixed ideas about what my future would be. I was always very creative and good at writing. And so I wanted to be maybe a journalist or something to do with writing. And one of my main role models was my English teacher, at school. And I eventually did actually become an English teacher. But along the way, part of it dawned on me that I wanted to help others. It was like a feeling of, I just wish that somebody would come and pick me out of this situation that I'm in. It was very isolated. I'm the youngest of 3 kids. And so when my brother and sister left home, it was just me and my parents. And as a teenager, that wasn't a whole lot of fun. We'd spend the weekend jackhammering to build a new retaining wall or digging a cellar to build under the house. There wasn't a lot of childhood pleasures in that. But again, it was very formative. And so when I was going to high school, some Vietnamese refugees one day just turned up at my school. Now, this is country New South Wales. I was the most foreign person in the school, I think, because of my surname. My father's a German immigrant. Don't speak a word of German. The only time I've ever been to Germany was for lunch. I was in Switzerland at the time. So, I have no connection with Germany or anything. And yet I was seen as a foreigner. And then all of a sudden, I think there were 6 Vietnamese kids turned up. They had been in a camp in Malaysia and then relocated to this country town. I can't remember how it was that they ended up in this country town. The school had never had someone before who didn't speak English. And so I started volunteering my time to teach them English. It worked well for me because I got to get out of sport so that I could teach them English. And I found a real pleasure in helping them. And I was also blown away by their stories. I thought my life was difficult. They had stories of pirate attacks when they left Vietnam by boat. And so it was certainly very humbling. And that kind of experience made me realize that, there are people in our world who go through extraordinary trauma. And the simplest things are a major help to them, like teaching them English when they've turned up in an English-speaking country. So those my early years were certainly formative, even though at the time, I really wished that they would be over.
I really love when you say, when you look at the roots of why you want to help and support people, and it's because I wish someone had done this for me. And then you just do it for other people as soon as you can. I really love this.
Yeah.
And maybe to come back on you mentioned your English teacher was your role model. Why is that? And what did the English teacher do that you wanted to emulate?
Well, the main thing that she did was she saw good in me. I was a troublemaker at school. I was always getting into fights or working out how to subvert the system. And a lot of it was because I was unhappy at home. And as a kid, you bring that to school. And I didn't really feel that I fit in. I'd grown up in Sydney and here I was, and it was a tiny, tiny school. There were 13 of us in grade 10 when I reached grade 10. That's how small the school was. And it only went to grade 10. Then I had to move to another school. So I was always in trouble, and a lot of my teachers thought I was just bad news. I don't think my family thought that I would amount to very much. And yet here was this one person who really believed in me and showed me that she believed in me. She let me try things. I started a school newspaper, and I was the managing editor of this little school newspaper that the teacher herself typed up at night and formatted and everything, because this is before you had Word and all of these programs. I think he did it on a typewriter. And that really inspired me that was all it took. One person believing in me, showing me that they trusted me, that they knew I was capable, seeing beyond, the exterior that I put out. And that led me to say, well, I want to be like that. And, we do that in life. When someone inspires us, we say to ourselves, I want to be like that person. And so I ended up heading off to university to become an English teacher, English and ESL, so English as a second language.
Wow, it's great how these two things, like being inspired by your English teacher, and I really love it, the trust. I think it's such an important thing maybe in a space where no one trusts you and maybe not even yourself. There is someone who's like, no, this guy, he can do so many things. And then it can just empower so much someone. And really love how, I don't know, it's like you combine English teaching and then what you've been doing, teaching English with a Vietnamese student to make it your new dream to follow.
Yeah. And, jumping ahead to today, just before I got on this interview, I was chatting with, I was having lunch actually with some of my team from Blue Dragon. And there's one boy, we were talking about one of the street kids, and he's a lovely, lovely kid. And we were actually talking about how lovely he is. And then one of the other staff who was there, who knew him when he first came to Blue Dragon, sort of had a bit of a laugh and pointed out that he wasn't like that when we first met him. Now, we've only known him for about 6 months. So I asked a bit more, and this is such a common thing. Very often when we meet kids for the first time, they've always been the trouble kids, and everyone believes that they're bad. Their parents tell them, "Oh, you're no good." Their teachers might pick on them and tell them, "Oh, you're stupid." And then they end up on the street, and maybe they're getting in trouble here. Then we meet them, and sometimes in weeks, otherwise months, you see this turnaround in kids where for the first time they have people who believe in them, and it's just incredible. Sometimes then when we meet with their parents, the parents will be saying, "Oh, he's always dishonest. He's always running away. He's always stealing." And we'll be saying, "No, we've had this kid in our care for months. He's never done any of that even one time." And it makes me conclude, drawing on my experience as a child and what I see in Blue Dragon, that you get out of people what you expect. If you meet someone and your expectation is this person's going to rip me off, this person's going to deceive me, then they probably will, or at least you'll believe that they will. And if you believe this is a good person and they're going to do their best for me, then there's a very good chance that they will.
Wow, I really love that. No, but it's really the power of trust. And I really love what you said. I never thought about it this way. Like, you'll get what you expect from people is so important. I think coming back to when you started studying English teaching and ESL, did it, fulfill what you were looking for at that time?
No. And it was a huge disappointment to me, because from that time in about grade 11, when I decided this was what I want to do, it was my dream to be a school teacher. And I loved university. I loved learning about education. I loved going to schools. You couldn't get me away from it. And then I got my first job, and it just wasn't what I'd wanted. And I think there were a couple of things. One was that I had my expectations too high, that I was wearing some rose-colored glasses. Frankly, teaching is hard. It's really, really hard. And I have the deepest respect for every teacher out there. Also, I was in a school that was probably a bad fit for me. And that was me, not the school. I'm the least sporting person that you'll ever interview. I'll say to people, throw me a ball and I'll break my arm. And I was placed in a school, that was selective based on sporting ability. So, I was in this school that was really different to me. It was a great school, but not for me. And as well as that, I was living really far from my family and from my friends. I didn't have any community. And so it just didn't work. I stuck with it for 2 years and then I left. After 2 years, I left and I went to work somewhere else. I took on a different career path and that didn't work either. Within 6 months, I went back to my school saying, hey, I've decided I really want to work here again. And they took me back. But I could see it wasn't right for me. And that second time that I was back at the school, what I realized was that I wanted to help the kids a lot more than I could as a teacher. So as a teacher, and this is true in a lot of systems in a lot of countries, and I think we need to really reevaluate this. As a teacher, my job was to get kids ready for exams and to help them get the best results that they could on that exam. And these were kids, they were mostly kids who were the children of immigrants or they were immigrants themselves. They had so many challenges in their life. They were living with parents who had escaped war. I remember teaching some kids from Iraq and Iran who talked about running from the military and being shot at while they ran. These were 12-year-old, 13-year-old kids telling me these stories. They didn't need help to get ready for an exam. They needed so much more. And as a teacher, I couldn't do that. So I found that really frustrating. Which again, coming forward now to think about Blue Dragon, it's one of the things that I love about my work that we don't have to be limited to say, well, we only do this thing. And when we get to talking about Blue Dragon, you'll see that what we do is very comprehensive. If you need something, then we'll find a way to do that. Nothing is off the table. But as a school teacher, it's very narrowly defined. And it has to be because it's such a big system. But yeah, it was very dissatisfying despite my dreams and my hopes. So it was a bit disillusioning. And again, utmost respect to people who are teachers.
Is that when you realize, okay, let's, try to find something that fits you more by moving to Vietnam, or it's not, the consequence?
Well, what had happened was I came to Vietnam on a holiday, and it was my first holiday out of Australia. I actually went to Thailand and I went trekking through Chiang Mai and then came to Ho Chi Minh City. And I just absolutely loved the people of Vietnam. Something about the whole country really intrigued me. The constant movement and dynamism, the optimism of people. And so I was only here for a short time and I wanted to come back. So I came back and I explored a bit more of the country. And then later on, a year later, I was back again, exploring further north. I only ever got as far as Hue. I never got further than Hue by about my third or fourth trip. And I thought, this is actually where I want to be. So I was unhappy in Australia. I was happy here in Vietnam. So I thought, okay, nothing to lose. So I left my job, went back to university in Australia for a couple of years to do a master's degree because I thought that would help me once I got to Vietnam. And then I came over. But no, I actually had no idea what I was going to do. I didn't come here thinking I'm going to set up a charity. In fact, I really thought I was going to come and have a bit of an easy life, that I'd, pick up some teaching or do something like that. Didn't have any plan.
Mm. No, it's so funny to see the link, when the school welcomes the Vietnamese students, when you have no idea what would happen later, but is it why you decided to go to Vietnam as well?
Yeah, that was part of it. but also because in the school where I was teaching, in the sports high school, it was half selective based on sporting ability, and half was the local community. And the local community was mostly Vietnamese, very, very diverse. As I said, there were kids from Iraq and Iran, really from everywhere in the world, but predominantly Vietnamese. And these students really caught my interest because I knew that they were all coming from really challenging home environments. But I could also see in them this desire to do well, to learn. It was really obvious in the Vietnamese group of students that I taught. And so with all of those experiences that I'd had, I was just intrigued, and I wanted to see, where are these people from? What is this country, Vietnam, all about? I'd met all of these wonderful Vietnamese people. Now I had to go and see their country.
It's so interesting because really feel, you as a teacher, as you mentioned, you prepare students for exam, but what you want to do is to prepare them for life or anything that emerges. And I interviewed recently a former basketball player, and who's also coaching. And she told me this sentence: a good coach will make you a better player, but great coach can change your life. I was like, what does it mean? And she told me she had good coaches in her life, which made her a better player, but only 2 great coaches who not only cared about her playing ability, her basketball skills, but really tried to understand, okay, how can I go all in and make her life better, or understand everything that might prevent her from being a good player, but beyond the basketball court. And I found it so interesting, and I can see a bit the parallel here where, okay, I can see the limit that surrounds you. And again, you mentioned it's a system and it's difficult to change. And yeah, I've tried to stalk you as much as possible for the last few weeks. Blue Dragon website as well, and some of the stories that I've read, and maybe I think it's a great transition now, but there's one other tipping point. I mean, not tipping is a bad word, but one of the, let's say, stories that really made me think again of Blue Dragon is I saw one of the story on Facebook of Leung, who got a bicycle when he was younger, which allowed him to go to school, because many kids have to walk, I don't know how many hours, kilometers just to reach school. And Blue Dragon offered him a bicycle, and a few years later, he's doing so well. He gave back and gave bicycles to Blue Dragon for the kids. And I found it so amazing that I mean, the first bicycle had so much impact, but that you have so much impact and people really care about Blue Dragon that they come back, and you are also there to create this loop and cycle. And I found it so amazing.
Yeah. One thing that we do perhaps a little bit differently to a lot of NGOs is we don't talk so much about the project cycle. So in a lot of development, you look at the project cycle at the start and at the end of it. And our view is we're here for the long term. If we start something, we stick with it. Now, in parts of our work, we do actually find a way that we can maybe eventually move along so that we're not needed. But that might take 10 years. So, for example, the first human trafficking work that we did involved rescuing a 13-year-old boy from Hanoi. He'd been trafficked to Ho Chi Minh City. And we got him home and we thought, okay, let's find out what's going on here in his family, why he was trafficked. And in doing that, we found actually it's not just him. There were heaps of kids from all around his village. And then we looked further and further, and we found there was this huge problem of kids from that area being trafficked to Saigon. And so we started systematically going and finding them and getting them home and then supporting them. So that first rescue was in December 2005. and we're still working in Hue. We have actually stopped the trafficking. Kids from Hue are no longer trafficked to the garment factories of Ho Chi Minh City as they were, but we still have a presence there. So there's a longevity to what we do, and that boy Nok is now one of our staff in Hue. A boy who I met on the streets of Ho Chi Minh City selling flowers is now one of my staff, ending human trafficking in Hue province and making sure it doesn't come back. So that longevity, looking at things without saying we're going to do this, but in 3 years we need to be finished, or in 5 years this must be done. We're there until it's done. And so we do have really long and deep relationships with both with kids and of course as they grow up into adults, and with communities. One interesting thing is that sometimes people don't even really know who we are. They may not recognize Blue Dragon as a name because we don't go around putting our logo on things. So we've built 100 plus houses for families. We never put our logo on that person's house. It's their house, not ours. Why would our logo be on it? And we'll help their kids go to school and so on. But we're kind of, we don't really play up, hey, we're from Blue Dragon Children's Foundation. We don't give them our sign to, we don't brand a calendar and give it to them to hang on their wall and this kind of thing. So people just know us as Michael and Van and Tui. They may not actually realize the organization behind it. Some do, but they see it as much more of a personal thing, that someone is helping them rather than this institution is helping. And that changes the dynamics as well.
It just makes me think about so many questions. So interesting. Maybe just to put everyone on the same page, could you share a bit and explore, what are some of the, I was going to say issues that Blue Dragon is addressing, but maybe, what are the different human trafficking challenges in Vietnam, and also, who are the people most at risk in Vietnam to be in these systems?
Yeah, sure. In fact, what I should do is take a step right back to say that when we started, our first few years were focused entirely on helping street kids in Hanoi. Now, they were mostly boys, and they were mostly from just 3 provinces around Hanoi. They were coming to the city, usually because of poverty, and earning money often by shining shoes and sending that money home. So when Blue Dragon started, we weren't even thinking about human trafficking. It was just, how do we help these street kids? Now, all these years later, we're still working with street kids, and we always will. And our objective is to make sure that every street child in Hanoi has somebody to look after them. Now, that might be Blue Dragon, by the way, and it might not be. It could be a government department or another organization. But what we want to do is make sure that there are enough of us around, that every child who comes to the city because of their problems at home will be safe. And to that end, we have staff going out onto the streets in groups every night, going all around the city looking for homeless kids. We don't call that trafficking, by the way, but in some contexts, such as the US context, what we deal with would be called human trafficking, because there's a lot of commercial sexual exploitation of the boys and girls who are out on the streets, a lot of organized pimping. But we deal with that through our Street Kids program. And then along the way came this issue of human trafficking, starting with Nok, that accidental meeting on the streets of Ho Chi Minh City where I could see this kid needs some help. And it led us to doing these rescue operations where we were going to the factories and finding kids, both girls and boys, who had been taken from their families under the pretense that they were going to a better life. These kids, they were just incredibly poor. They were from along the beaches and lagoons of Hue province. And later on, we also found that there was quite a lot of trafficking of ethnic minority children from Dien Bien province in the northwest. Desperately poor people. And the traffickers would come along with promises of, your child will learn a trade. It'll be good for their life. They'll become tailors. They'll be rich. But none of it was true. They were sitting on concrete floors in these little garment factories, mostly family-owned garment factories. And they were just working 18 hours a day. It was absolutely appalling. And people didn't realize it. So it took Blue Dragon, just that initiative to go looking and then to go back to the community and say, do you know that this is what's happening to your children? And when people realized it, they were outraged. And, community members and government officials alike, because this was not what they thought was happening. They actually thought it was something good for the kids, and they were devastated to learn the reality of it. And so over about 10 years, we kept doing those rescues, getting those factories shut down, while also helping families in Hue province to break out of their poverty. So we'd build houses, we'd pay for their kids to go to school. We'd buy them chickens or pigs to raise, or we'd teach them how to raise fish in the lagoons so that people could earn enough money that when someone came along and said, let me help you, they could reply, I don't need your help, I'm fine. So anti-poverty with anti-trafficking hand in hand. And it's been a great recipe for success. And then along the way, so, we start with street kids, and then we meet children being trafficked within Vietnam for labor exploitation. And then along the way, we came across a single case of a girl trafficked from Vietnam to China. And we went to look for her because we had a couple of vague clues about where in China she was, but not enough evidence, to really get a police investigation happening. And we found her and rescued her. And ever since then, we've been rescuing girls in China and more recently, Myanmar as well. Now these are girls and women who go to China thinking that they're going with a friend or that they're going for a job, and discovering that they're deceived. They're not women who go to become sex workers and then change their mind. They're people who are tricked, and they're sold either into brothels or as brides, so sold to a man basically against their will, because that man wants a child. And so that's the main issue, the main human trafficking issue that we're working on. And we believe that there might be a day when we can say that trafficking doesn't happen anymore. That's what we're actually working towards.
Could you maybe, walk us through how does a rescuing intervention look like? Like how long it is, when does it start, and throughout the process?
Sure. I guess that's the question everybody asks. And to be honest,
sorry for my non-originality.
No, not at all. No, in fact, what I mean is that it really is a question to, when I say, I kind of say a little bit offhandedly, we rescue them, and that raises a lot of questions. Hang on, how do you do that? So I can't share all of the details, but I can share in general. And I do want to say that the rescues that we do are in response to calls for help. So we're rescuing people who have been trafficked and who have made contact with their family, or their family has realized that they were trafficked and contacted us saying, please help. And the reason I say that is that there are also organizations that will rescue anyone who is in a brothel, for example, whether or not that person is saying, I want to be rescued. And we don't do that. We rescue people who are saying, I want to be rescued. So normally a call comes, someone has been trafficked, or if we're lucky, is still being trafficked and hasn't crossed that border yet, hasn't been harmed yet. gather the evidence that we have to work out where they are. We have people who will then go to their location. If we can call on the police to intervene, then we certainly do. But if we can't, or if there's just not enough time, we set up an escape. So we don't go kicking down doors and busting in, and we don't have guns, nothing like this. When everything goes well, the rescue will conclude with us having a car and being kind of parked outside the house or the building where this woman is kept, communicating with her saying, when you have a chance, run. And we're outside, and she'll run and jump in the car and we'll take off. So it's about setting up an escape. And sometimes it might be because even trafficked women may have some degree of freedom. Especially if they've been trafficked for some months or years, they'll need to go to the market, or even if they're being held in a brothel, they need to go and get their nails done or get their hair done. So there are these moments of vulnerabilities that we exploit, where right now no one's watching. Okay, now we go. We've done rescues where we've been able to find that person and bring them home on the same day that we got the call. And there are rescues that have taken a year, depending on how complex it is to find them. Very often, when a Vietnamese person is in China against their will, they don't know where they are. They can't read the street signs, right? They might even be deliberately confused. That first rescue that we did, which is back in 2007, there was a whole brothel full of girls. So actually we ended up rescuing 6 or 7 from that brothel. They could have walked back to Vietnam, but they didn't know. So when they had been taken across the border, they were put in a car and just driven around and around and around, and eventually taken back to this brothel. Now they thought they were deep inside China, and they were barely across the border. So when they call for help, we wish that they can tell us their address, right? Very, very rarely can they do that. So a lot of investigation might have to take place if that's the situation.
Do you risk anything as an organization or individual when doing these rescue missions?
Yeah. And I like to start answering that question by really emphasizing that we do it as safely as we can. We're not trying to play hero. We're not trying to be big men going in and saving the day. It's not like that. Like I said earlier, we're here for the long term. We want to keep rescuing for as long as we need to. And so every rescue has to be done with everyone's safety in mind. We've rescued more than 1,000 people, by the way, from both within Vietnam and in China, and also in Myanmar, and a couple from some other countries as well. And things do sometimes go a little bit sideways, a little bit pear-shaped, but we can always get out of it. And we work as closely as we can with authorities so that, we don't want to do anything illegal. That's also very important. But at the end of the day, for all of that, there are people who certainly don't like Blue Dragon because of this work. Sometimes they're dangerous people. Now, in that regard, that's one reason that it's very important that we collaborate with police and with government authorities, and don't try to go solo. Don't try to be the big hero. The long-term solution to human trafficking is not in one NGO doing some brave deed. It's all about collaboration. Multiple organizations working with the government, working with the community together as a force for good together. And that will get us to the end. And so, yes, certainly parts of what we do are risky to us. We understand that. We consider that it's far more dangerous to not act. If someone was to call for help, they're in trouble. To not get them out is leaving their life in danger. So we see that what we do is necessary, and we do all we can to make sure that the next operation will also take place.
It's very interesting when you say, yes, I mean, of course you don't do anything illegal. Actually, it's the traffickers who are doing something illegal. So it's trying to reestablish the legal. I mean, it doesn't mean anything what I just said, but yeah, it's the traffickers who's doing something illegal, and then you're just, trying to rescue these people. No, thanks so much for sharing. It's so just open another door of things I didn't know in my brain.
Yeah.
And yeah, if we come back, yes, go ahead.
Maybe one other thing I could add there are kind of two dangerous parts of our work. One is those human trafficking rescues, and the other is here in Vietnam, that we, in our work with street kids, where we have dealt with people who abuse children. And actually of the two groups, they have proven to be the more dangerous of the two. The human traffickers, I think, see it kind of as a business. Now, we're a risk to their business. People who abuse children seem to have or feel that they have a lot more to lose. And they can be very dangerous. We have definitely had threats from those guys. And we have to take a lot of care. The traffickers generally don't really know who we are. But these abusers, they generally do know all about us. They study us very carefully. So that's an interesting thought that a lot of people don't realize. Of course, the traffickers are dangerous, but they're not the most dangerous people that we come up against.
Mm. Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, I didn't know anything about it. So for me, it's just so many things I want to keep exploring. And yes, I mean, you mentioned before, doing all these rescue interventions and all the anti-trafficking work. So you were working in anti-poverty, working with street kids, and you still do. I think not defining, but something I can see around a bit in the website and many stories is you started actually. I mean, one of the first things you did is by teaching English to street kids. So I just wonder, why did you do that at that time?
Yeah, and a very simple answer. That was what I could do. It was what I was good at. And if I'd been a doctor, maybe I would have been checking their health. If I'd been a chef, maybe I would have been cooking the meals. It was really a simple response that these kids are on the street and they're trying to earn money. What can I do that would enrich their lives? I can teach them some English. Now, of course, they need a lot more than English. And these days we do a lot more than teaching English. We get the kids back to school. We help them find jobs. Many have gone on to university. We have more than 100 young people in university right now. So that was, English teaching was our way in to their lives right at the beginning. But again, just as when I was teaching, I very quickly saw English lessons are one part of many that they need help with. They needed a home. They needed to be with their family. They needed to be in school. But I started with the one thing that I was good at.
And when did you? So I guess you kept going and kept teaching them English. And when did you, realize that, okay, I actually want to be full time doing this and helping street kids?
Yeah, look, that's an interesting story as well, because the truth is that I was looking for ways to get out of it. So I was teaching at the National Economics University, and some of my students there would volunteer alongside me, because I'd go in to teach English and I'd be telling them these stories about, I was out on the weekend and I met these kids. So some of my students, now Pham Si Chung was perhaps the main one, and he lives in the US now, and he's the president of Blue Dragon USA, which is a 501c3. But there were others, a young guy named Zung, and then there was also another teacher, an economist, a Spanish economist named Gonzalo, and so on. And we were all just volunteers. But what we could see was this thing was growing. We'd start off having a lesson with one or two kids, and within a month there'd be 20 kids coming, and it was kind of round the clock and non-stop. And the more we understood, the more complex it was. So as we got to know the kids, we realized, this kid is in trouble with the police for something, right? How do we deal with that? This one's running away from their mum because she beats them. How do we help with that? So what I did, I started contacting other charities saying, hey, look, there's this problem here in Hanoi. Do you think you could come and help? At that time, I planned to live in Ho Chi Minh City, and I thought I was only in Hanoi for a few months. And most organizations would at least respond and talk to me. But of course, they didn't have budgets or networks to start helping kids in Hanoi. And so kind of one by one, they'd have to let me know, look, I'm sorry, but we really can't do that. And some were happy to really give advice. Others, like I said right at the start, others were not. And then finally, I had this kind of dawning, this realization that what I was doing was wrong. I was concerned about a problem. And so I was ringing people saying, hey, I'm concerned about this, and I think you should fix it. And now, all these years later, I get those calls sometimes from people. Somebody will message me and say, hey, Blue Dragon, I know you help kids. So I'm here in this country or in this city, and there's this problem. I think you should come and deal with it, just like I did all those years ago. And so I try to be very supportive. We can't just endlessly grow and replicate ourselves as much as we'd like to. And sometimes I have to say to those people, maybe it's actually for you to do something. I don't mean that in a negative way at all. Certainly, I'll give advice and however I can help. But I was in that situation. I saw a problem, and I wanted to see who else could fix it. Eventually, I realized, I've got to fix it. And so that was how it gradually came to be, that we went from a bunch of volunteers who had good intentions and were, teaching some English to street kids to the organization that we are now.
How long did all of that take?
Well, a couple of years. In fact, we get into debates now about when did that start? Was that at Christmas, or our record keeping wasn't great right at the start? But it was by the end of 2004, we were fully registered to work in Vietnam. So officially we started in late 2004. Unofficially, we started in late 2002. So I guess there's a couple of years there in getting ourselves set up. And I do say that too to anybody interested in coming to start an organization. You've got to be prepared to give it 10 years before things really take off. And there'll be 10 difficult years.
It's what happened for Blue Dragon.
Yeah. And, it took us a good 10 years to really work out what we wanted to do. And that still evolves. That's not a fixed thing. It's not like on day one, we wrote down, we're going to protect every street kid and we're going to end human trafficking. Even that only actually crystallized for us a few years ago. And in that uncertainty, you're in there, you're fixing problems, but maybe you don't really have that super clear, well-defined goal. And the only way to find that goal is actually to get in there and do the work. So it's an iterative process of doing something and learning from it, kind of clarifying things, then doing more. And it can also be painful because while you're doing that, you also need money to keep going. And yet you don't really have a cohesive story, or you can't really explain fully how you're going to achieve what you're talking about. And to that, I have to say, thank goodness for generous people in this world who give to charities like Blue Dragon and lots of others. that are in those years of working it out. And some of us get there and some of us don't. But it's all possible because people in this world are generous and believe in change. So give to causes like ours.
I really love, for me, the best way to start an organization or anything is by you just started doing things without, ever thinking that it will become my organization, our organization, and, without really planning anything. And the plan just comes when you need to.
Yeah. I think that's a fair way of describing it. And I have my own very strong bias on this. I can't imagine starting something with a clear plan. Now, other people look at the way I've done it and think, how did you do that? That would have been terrible. And I'm in the other camp. I'm looking at people who come with a plan saying, why do you have a plan? That's not going to work. So I'm a really big believer in that organic process, letting it grow. Like when you put a seed in the ground, you can't draw the picture of what that tree will look like in 20 years. You have no idea. And I kind of feel like that's how it has been with Blue Dragon. I know a lot of what Blue Dragon will be in 20 years from now, but I have no idea what it will look like. And I'm fine with that.
How many people were there once you started? I mean, officially started in 2004?
Yeah, there were, by 2004, we might have had like 5 or 6 people. But we were all volunteers. For a couple of years, I didn't earn any money. And then I had this wonderful friend, Hugh, and his wife, Susan. And they started giving me from their pocket $100 a month, just so that I had something for myself. And other people would come on board, and eventually I realized I need to employ people. I need to pay them, because otherwise they can't stay long. That there's often a lot of discussion around should people who work for nonprofits be volunteered or should they be paid? If you want to keep people for 10 years, you need to pay them. I remember our very first paid employee. We were having this conversation, and he was saying, I think I might not really be able to help much anymore because I really need to get a job. And I asked him, what are you going to do? He was still a student. And he replied, I know a restaurant where I can work. So I said to him, well, how much will they pay you? And he replied, $6 a day. Okay, this is 20 years ago, so $6 a day. And I replied, okay, I'll pay you $7 a day. And that was my first wage negotiation.
Wow. Yeah, no, I'm asking because I was listening to another interview of you just before as well, that now you have a team of 100.
Yeah.
That's crazy when you think about it.
Tell me about it. And they're all, I could talk for an hour about what amazing people they are. We have lawyers on staff. And again, that's one of the unusual things about Blue Dragon. We actually have full-time lawyers on staff. And they're the people, organizing rescue operations, representing people in court, helping families who don't have birth certificates. A lot of our kids get in trouble with the law. So their work is really incredible. Then we have staff who are social workers and psychologists. We have people who've come to us from really diverse backgrounds, people who were in the hospitality industry and have switched over to something in social work. Some of our staff, about 10% of our staff, a little bit more now actually, were once beneficiaries of our program. Like I mentioned about NOC before. And some are happy to be identified that they were once Blue Dragon kids, and some are not comfortable. So, we don't always talk about that, but we have staff in a range of positions, including very senior positions, who once were children that we helped. And so there's a lot of diversity in our team. We very deliberately make sure we're employing people from ethnic minority communities, especially in our work in those communities. So ethnically, it's quite a diverse group. We have people who've been with us now for 15 years, and of course, people who joined us last week. So it's a wonderful team. A lot of very different people and different ideas. And you know, when you harness that energy of 100 very different people, you come up with something great.
I have a random question before I really love what you said. Have you read the book Reinventing Organization?
Yeah, Frederic Laloux.
Yes. Okay. So because I was listening to the other interview, I was like, wow, that sounds like something I heard of. So another random question. Have you heard of Officiance in Vietnam?
Of who, sorry?
Officiance. It's a company based in Ho Chi Minh City.
Maybe not, or maybe I'm not getting your pronunciation on that.
Oh, Office Science, maybe.
No, maybe I haven't heard of them. Why do you ask?
Because they are the one who translated it in Vietnamese, Reinventing Organization.
Ah, right. Ah, fantastic. Yes. We have a staff library, and I certainly have both the English and the Vietnamese versions of that. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, no, because I asked because they try to gather this community of different, organizations who try to function as a teal organization. I just found it very interesting, and I didn't hear a lot of organization in Vietnam yet who try to, function with some of the principle of this book. Feels like we're speaking about the Bible, but it's a manager.
Yeah. So there are a few. I believe Decathlon, which of course is a very big French company. I believe that they are on a journey towards teal, and I know of a school, a private language school that is, and for Blue Dragon. So a lot of people listening to this might not know what is this teal, what it's reinventing organizations. But Frederic Laloux is a great thinker who has looked at organizations and their structures and development, and identified, going from kind of the mafia where you've got one guy in charge and he'll beat you to death if you defy him, through to organizations that you might say are really enlightened, right? And have processes for their staff to share and take leadership and so on. And he's classified those. So, going back a few years, about 6 or 7 years now, Blue Dragon was at a point where we'd grown a lot, and I had views of how organizations should work that, I guess were a lot like Frederic Laloux, but Blue Dragon wasn't like that at all. We had become quite hierarchical and structured, and bureaucratic. And maybe people from outside the organization wouldn't have even seen that, but inside you could feel it. And when that happens, you also get gossip and cliques among the staff, and none of that's good. How can you care for kids when the staff are divided among themselves? And so we went on our own journey to think, let's reinvent ourselves. What do we want to be like? And I've had amazing input from a lot of different people, well-known people like Frederic Laloux and the Corporate Rebels. If you've never come across them, you've got to look up their website. Great friends like Ken Everett in Australia, great business thinkers. So even that is an ongoing evolution, and Blue Dragon, for us to care for these kids who are in these extreme situations, it's demanding, it's often painful. So as an organization, we have to think, well, how do we operate? This isn't just like a philosophical question of business structure. This is, how do we organize ourselves so that we can sustain this? And I think we've gone a long way in that journey. It's been really exciting.
How has but I think listening you saying that, and also knowing that you started, just a few people, volunteers, to a team of 100 staff. I wonder, how has your role of CEO, and now you are co-CEO, I think, if I'm not
Yes.
correct. But, founder, CEO, volunteer, where I guess you were doing pretty much everything
Yeah.
everyone in the team when you started to now, how has your role evolved over the years?
Yeah. So exactly as you say, when we were very small back in those early years, I was the social worker, the cashier, the report writer, the cleaner, the one who got in trouble from the police when we did the wrong thing. And now it's actually a relief to have a team, I can say. And yes, co-CEO, we now have two CEOs. And so my role has evolved to focus a lot on government relations with the Vietnamese government, and also the external, the fundraising and communications, and the management and administrative side of Blue Dragon. Whereas the other co-CEO, Sky McConaughey, she focuses a lot more on the kids and on the programs. Now that for me, it was a surprise that I would ever be happy to take on that kind of behind the scenes role, rather than that direct front line. But actually I'm really enjoying it because I can see the impact that my decisions make. If we raise money well, if we explain what we're doing, if we find ways to tell the world what's happening, that can have a huge impact on our ability to operate. So it is a very different role now. And as co-CEOs, we work very, very closely together. We're very different people. We almost come from, or in some ways, quite different philosophical, sometimes even opposite approaches to how we solve things. But that difference is a real strength, because at the end, when we have to make that decision, well, what are we going to do? The question, number one, is what's best for the kids, and number two is what's best for the organization, in that order. And when you look at it from that point of view, you can actually work out how to decide if there is a difference of opinion.
Really, I think I started to have this thought earlier when you mentioned, some people might not even know what is Dragon. They know the individual that supported them along the way. I think from that now it's like two co-CEO, from the fact that you are trying to reinvent your organization. Yeah, I find it very interesting that it's really, you are so, you as in you and Blue Dragon and everyone, but really, I think that's the definition of very purpose-oriented rather than individual. And okay, everyone should know about Blue Dragon, but everything you say is really, okay, does it help the kids? And does it help us to help more kids in the end?
Yeah, that's right. I kind of see us as like bamboo instead of as a metal bar. We can flex and flex and flex. And recently during COVID was a really good example of that, when a lot of organizations kind of had to mostly stop what they were doing during COVID. Blue Dragon was busier than we've ever been before. So we were able to just switch to new kinds of work, not totally different, but still did some different activities. So for example, we have staff who go out on the streets every single day looking for street kids. Well, those staff switched their work to delivering food to homeless people, children and adults, and also to delivering food to families who live in slum areas or on boats along the river. And in fact, people were calling us. We were getting people calling saying, "Hey, I know this family who needs help." Someone would ring and say, "Can you help me?" And because of that really flexible way that we work, it's very responsive and adaptive. I honestly don't think we had to say no to anyone. The only people we would say no to would be people who could get help from someone else. Like if actually their local government could support them, then we would say go there. or we'll ring the local government for you and connect you with them. But if there was anyone who absolutely needed us, then we helped. So being like that bamboo, being flexible, and now, of course, we've bounced back to almost to like we were before. We're not delivering food every day to homeless people now. Now our focus is back on street kids, but it's a real strength to be able to do that.
Definitely. Like earlier, you mentioned that, some in development world, it's project cycle. So 2020, 2035, you have to do this and don't do anything else, right?
Yeah.
And I think from like one for those who are listening, one pillar of reinventing organization is like evolutionary purpose. So sensing, what are the needs of our surroundings when it comes to our purpose. And I think it's definitely what you guys managed to do. And rather than, okay, we said that we were going to do this and it's related, you said, yeah, you don't like plans. So you just, go with the flow. But I think it works well. This is a good example of how lean, flexible, as long as, it still fits with your core purpose, but then you are flexible to do new things. So it's really...
Yeah. And we have some donors, like the US State Department, at different times has funded our work, and some other very big funding agencies, and they like plans, that's for sure. So obviously we do have those plans, and they have to be very detailed, very structured. But at the same time, we also have donors. For example, we have a monthly giving club that we call Dragon Wings, and there are people who send $5 a month. Some people send 20, some send $50 a month. And that money we can kind of use almost for anything, like wherever there's a gap, wherever there's a child in need. So we have these donors, like the US government, who say, well, here's some money and it's for exactly these things. And it's for this period of time. It'll start on this date and it'll end on this date. And we also have donors who are sending their $20 every single month. And so we have that discipline from having to have, to report to those major institutions, and do absolutely the right thing by them. And also the freedom and the flexibility that a lot of our individual donors give us. So our funding model is also very complex, as is the rest of Blue Dragon.
Yeah, but it's good that you leave this space for flexibility and, I know that I have a lot of, but it's, I really, for me, the topic, the book of Frederic Laloux, I really love it because it's when I joined the Learning Hub in Hanoi, everyone had read the book and they were trying to launch the space as a TL organization. And it was a co-working space and also event venue, but many of the people using the space are also trying to function as a TL organization. So the first assignment they gave me is read this book.
Yeah. And it's great to do that. And, I don't agree with 100% of everything that Frederic Laloux suggests or recommends. And I don't think he would be offended by that because I think even his ideas will always be evolving.
Yeah.
But, having that input and getting it from different people. I also love to read Peter Drucker, who is, going back 50 years ago, was a major management guru. And, his ideas are very different to Frederic Laloux, but I have a lot to learn from him as well. And then guys like, Jim Collins, there's so many different ideas that might all have something great in them. And I think each organization has to work out what is it that we believe and that we need. And maybe that leads you to purely following one philosophy, or maybe it leads you to bringing a few together and creating your own. And that's a little bit like what Blue Dragon has done.
Could you share maybe like one new practice that Blue Dragon has adopted since like 2014?
Yeah. Well, we have what we call the advice process. And there are various people who have an advice process and they use it in different ways. The way we use it is, so it's a decision-making tool. Very often what happens in dysfunctional organizations is the most powerful person in the room will make a decision. So maybe that's the CEO or a manager. We're going to do this now. Then everybody complains and grumbles, but does it, or half does it because, they have to. Everyone's unhappy. It eventually falls apart, and then it gets fixed and you start again. The advice process front loads the discussion process. So if I'm going to make a decision that affects people in the organization, I have to consult them. Now, not every single decision. It's like if it's something big or new, not like, will we have lettuce or carrots for lunch today? That doesn't need the advice process, but do we change our lunch hour? That needs the advice process. So questions, issues that would affect people and that are something new. So I'm compelled by this process to get input from everyone it would affect and also from anyone with expertise. And then it's not a vote. It's not about democracy. It's not even consensus. So recently, in fact, a good example of this, we recently introduced to Blue Dragon a new policy on giving our staff leave if they're affected by domestic violence. And we did that by researching policies that are online and then going to a staff meeting and saying, hey, look, this is what we're thinking about doing, because we know that domestic violence is an issue. More than 60% of women report experiencing some kind of domestic violence at some time in their life in Vietnam. It's going to affect Blue Dragon staff as well. Let's be realistic. So we said, this is what we're thinking of doing. We'd like your input. And everyone, they did it in small groups and they had opportunities to give feedback privately. Then we went away and we drafted this policy. And in doing that, there was one very strong view that a lot of people felt we should not call it a domestic violence leave policy. We should call it something else. And one of the suggestions was safe leave, so that people didn't have to feel embarrassed talking about domestic violence. Now, everyone was nearly unanimous in saying we shouldn't call it domestic violence leave. In the end, we did call it the domestic violence leave policy. And it was because as we were going through this decision-making process, we thought, we don't want to avoid the issue. This issue is taboo. We're trying to make it not taboo. We can call it something else, but that's just a euphemism. And anyway, everyone will know what you're talking about if you start saying safe leave. And so we made a decision that was different to what everyone in the organization wanted. But we went back, and part of the advice process compels us to explain our reasoning and give people an opportunity to object. And so we explained, and no one objected. And now we have a pretty good policy giving staff leave for domestic violence reasons, which, we hope we never have to use. But that's an example. So previous to this evolution in the organization, I would have just written the policy and sent it out and said, here it is now. And that would have been it. Maybe got input from a couple of people. Now we ask everyone who would be affected. And that's the whole organization in some cases.
That's so interesting. How do you, and again, linked to many things that you have said so far, I feel like, I've never been in, I guess, one challenge when an organization tries to transform themselves, it's the ego of managers or, the senior management. I wonder if it was an issue and how are you dealing with it? Or maybe it's not an issue. I don't know.
There were certain people who had that block to change. They wanted power, or they thought, these ideas are just ridiculous. Those people eventually moved on. And that's fair enough. This is not for everyone. Other staff struggled, and some even still struggle a little bit. So even with that idea that it's not a vote, the winner isn't the person with the most votes. There are some people in the organization who still sometimes struggle with that a little bit, because, they've grown up in such with a different philosophy. But everyone who stayed is able and mentally agree, but maybe sometimes they struggle a bit to implement it. So there was a process there of bit of inner struggle that some people had, leading to some people leaving the organization. But what we have now works really well, and when new people join, they very quickly adapt to this new environment. Now, one thing with this approach that we have is it's very non-hierarchical, and I do find that there are some staff who struggle with that. There are a lot of people who say, no, tell me who the boss is. Don't tell me that I can make a decision. Just tell me what to do. That's a work in progress that we're still dealing.
It's interesting because the challenge is both sides, from manager who might feel losing power, but maybe also person who used to have a manager like, oh, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah. And another part, it wasn't only about leave the organization or just go along with it. It was also about working out, so what is the right role for you? So some people were in management positions and really struggled with that, but they were really good people, and we didn't want to lose them. We may have been able to, for a lot of those people, we found other roles that they now love to bits. And when they look back, they actually reflect, I hated being a manager. So that's been interesting to see.
Yeah, but that's nice. And yeah, I mean, it's so important to be, I feel, because it's related as well to, I know, when you say about trusting people, you got trusted and you want to trust people. The mission of Blue Dragon is to trust, empower street kids. And I think this advice process and everything you've been talking about is a way as well to empower the people within Blue Dragon first. And I find it's very interesting.
Yes. Well, you see, that's the key thing at the end of the day. If I treat my staff in a way of, I'm the boss, so you follow my orders, and I want you to really negotiate with the kids and work with them and empower them. Well, if the staff aren't empowered, they are not going to empower the kids. If the staff are treated as get to work, do this, do that, of course they're going to treat the kids like that. And companies that work in customer service will say the same thing, that you treat your staff the way you want them to treat the clients. So for us, it's treat the staff the way you want them to treat the kids. And so that has led in the last few years, we've seen just a flowering of our work, of getting amazing results in the most complex situations. And it's a flow on, it's a ripple effect from the way we work with each other to the way the staff then work directly with children and families.
Yeah, it's so nice to hear that because the purpose is not, it's to empower staff and everything, but in the end, it's also, does it make Blue Dragon save, protect, support more street kids? And it does. So it's congrats.
Yeah.
I wanted to come back on one point, which more around mental health. I wonder for you or for Blue Dragon, but how you must face here terrible stories. Inspiring stories, but also a lot of very difficult stories to hear. I wonder, how do you deal with that? Not to go crazy or to feel very sad every day.
Yeah, no, that's super important. Within Blue Dragon, we have a team of psychologists, and they are available to some extent to support staff, but more importantly, what they do is help set and guide our approach to caring for ourselves and each other. It's an ongoing thing, and it's something that's never perfect and never finished. But we try to make sure that everyone, me included, has time off, has a break, has support. It is something that we have found, we have to pay attention to. If you just assume that everything's okay, then things will go badly wrong. And at times in our history, we have been close to giving up. I've been close to giving up. There are different staff who've, gone home feeling absolutely terrible and wondering, can I go on with this? Is it worth it? So we've really learned from those bad experiences. In part, our structure as an organic team is very helpful because it means we're there for each other. One of the principles in Blue Dragon is what we call total responsibility, which means that every person in the organization is responsible for the organization's success. So it doesn't matter if you're a cook, if you're a CEO, if you're a social worker, the guard looking after the motorbikes, you're responsible. And so if you see someone not well, if you see someone working too much, you're responsible to either go over and have a chat to them or to talk to someone else and say, hey, that person needs some help. So the way we're set up now helps us a lot. And it takes the responsibility away from like one or two people. The CEOs are responsible for that. We are, along with everyone else. And so it's a shared responsibility that we're always working at.
What made you not give up all these years?
Sometimes it has been having just enough success. It's amazing how far success will take you. A lot of things can be going wrong, but if some little things go right, you can find the inner strength. Sometimes it has just been a realization of, well, if I don't do this, then who will? And sometimes that has kept me going. And sometimes it's been a kick in the pants from one of my colleagues saying, well, if you give up, then what are we all going to do? And I have a distinct memory of one of my key staff telling me that once. And so at different times it's been different things. But like you were saying before, we're focused on purpose. And so things can go badly wrong, but you can still be focused on purpose. If you're focused on achievements, then when things go badly wrong, you're hurt even more. So we're looking at that bigger picture of the purpose, and we accept that at times things will be great and at times they won't. We keep our eye on that bigger picture.
Yeah, I love it. Just enough success. If everything might be burning, but there's still this tiny tunnel of hope that keeps you going and gives you the strength to put water on all the fires.
Yeah. You mentioned the story of the boy Luo, who we helped more than 10 years ago, and who recently, came back and made a donation. When something like that happens, it's hard to express the feeling that it has on the impact that it has on all of us at Blue Dragon. That sense of, wow, we did this one little thing. And all these years later, he reveals how much it meant to him. That's pretty motivating. And there are some healing properties in that. But again, you can't rely only on the successes, because you also have failures. And so you do need to be grounded and accept that sometimes the success comes, far between.
Yeah. I think it's a great tour of what Blue Dragon is, how Blue Dragon is working, what is the purpose of Blue Dragon. I have just 4 quick final questions.
Fire away.
Let you free. I took so much time already. It's a bit more, I don't know. Some people like this question, some people hate it. So let's see with you.
I'll tell you.
But yeah, let's say, imagine you can go back in time and you can, let's say you are teaching your first class at NEU. Not sure how old you were, but you can tell something to this younger teacher, Michael. What would you tell him?
I would say, keep going, keep your head up. Especially looking back at those really early days, I got discouraged very, very easily. If someone said to me, this is stupid, or you don't know what you're doing, then I would spend weeks feeling terrible about that and analyzing that and thinking about that. And I wish I could go back and say, just stay focused. Don't worry about the people who criticize.
And focus on the people who are there, and you had people already supporting you. It's like the glass half full.
Yeah, I was so unsure of myself. And so any criticism would bring me undone. I'd love to go back. I was 27. I'd love to go back and grab myself by the ear and say, don't listen to them. Be confident.
I hope we all had this older us who would tell us this. I feel like it's something I face as well. I feel like many, not necessarily young, but people face that. So I think we all had this older Michael who could tell us this.
Yeah. I think the key is, sure, listen to criticism. Don't ignore it. Don't dismiss it, but also don't take it to heart. Decide for yourself what there is to learn in that. I feel so sorry when I see other people discouraged. But anyway, that's my answer to that question. It's a good question. I love that question.
Thank you. And how would you like people, whether it's a listeners who just listen to your story or people in general in life, how would you like people to know you for and remember you for?
In a way, I do find that one hard to answer, because actually what I want to say is it's okay to not remember me. If from listening to me and from learning about Blue Dragon, if the impact on you is that your heart swells, if you are inspired, if you think, you know what, I'm going to do something good today, then that's the impact that I want. Forget me. I'm nothing. Think about you and what you can do in this world. I lived in a caravan on a block of land when I was a kid. I failed at being a school teacher. I'm not some great guy, to think about. And I'm no different to anyone listening to this podcast. Turn inwards and reflect on yourself.
Wow, that's didn't expect this. I say that, but it goes along many things you have said, and feel like it makes sense. It's not about you; it's about the big cause, the big purpose that you set for yourself. Exactly. I really love your answer. How would you describe yourself in 3 hashtags?
3 hashtags. Wow. Thank goodness I'm on Twitter. Hashtag exhausted. How's that for a good one?
Very inspiring.
I'd better make a hashtag inspiring then, as my second one, because I think even someone who is exhausted, and when I say I'm inspiring, what I actually mean is I look for ways to inspire other people, and not just by saying, look at me, I'm inspiring. I think you might have seen my blog, lifeisalongstory.com. And the purpose of my blog is just to share something each week that will inspire someone, to share a story about, here's a girl who had the hardest time, but now is doing really well. So hashtag inspirational. And a final hashtag, hey, learning. Hashtag learning. I I'm constantly looking back thinking, wow, how did I make so many mistakes? And I know that in 10 years, I'll be looking back thinking, wow, 10 years ago, I was really getting it all wrong. So I am constantly learning.
Cool. Thank you so much, Michael. And the final one is, how can people get to know more about Blue Dragon? You mentioned your blog. So you post every Monday, I think, right? Something like this every week.
I write that blog every week and it comes out on Monday, and it's on our Facebook page as well, on the Blue Dragon Facebook page. Yeah. Get over to the website and have a look there. And we're across, Facebook and Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. And we're on all of those platforms again, because we actually want to inspire. Our organizational purpose, we wrote this a few years ago, just maybe 3 or 4 years ago, reflecting on all of the things that Blue Dragon does. We said, well, what are we actually here for? And we said, well, we're here to give exceptional care to children and families. So in that, there's just a purely charitable cause, not even a developmental, people talk about charity versus development. And part of what we're here for is just to look after people, to care. But then maybe there's the yin and the yang here, or the other side of the coin is, while making the world better for everyone. So there's a real outward looking part of our work. We want to inspire people. And often I'll say, sometimes someone might say to me, well, why should I donate to Blue Dragon? And I'll respond, you don't have to. Absolutely. As long as you're donating to someone, as long as you're doing something good. I was an English teacher in Hanoi and I could teach English to street kids. Who needs your help? Who needs you? What can you do that'll make life better for someone? Is it packing boxes for a local charity? Is it helping with accounting? Is it helping one of your neighbors with their tax return? Find that way that you can help. And so that's why we're on all of those different platforms, try to inspire people to find that good in themselves and care for others. That was a long answer to that question. I apologize.
Oh, no, it's great. We have time, no worries. And you mentioned a bit, but how can people support Blue Dragon also?
Yeah, well, I mentioned about Dragon Wings earlier, and that's a great way to help. If you want to make like a modest contribution every month that really adds up to something and be part of something big. If you're in Dragon Wings, we send pretty regular emails, just sharing stories, just telling people, this is what your money has done. This child's life is better because of you. Or you can just donate it at any time. We have some people who've put us in their will to give us a gift in their will. We have businesses that donate. And we work a lot with schools. So if there are any schools or universities, or students listening, there's actually a section on our website, especially for schools, where we provide resources and ideas for schools to learn from. So whoever you are and whatever your situation in life, there's a way that you can connect with Blue Dragon.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michael. So everyone, I'm sure you will get inspired by the story of Michael. As he mentioned, turn inwards, see what. I mean, I really love your question, your answer when I asked, why did you teach English to these street kids? And you said, because it's what I was good at. I think it's a great question to ask, and it can be a difficult answer when you don't know what you are good at. But like if you are good at something, it's something maybe other people can learn from. If you like Blue Dragon's work, if you want to receive cool stories every Monday, join the Blue Wings, donate something. But I just wanted to finish this episode by thank you so much. I learned so much. I was super inspired. And yeah, very, very proud to be part of these Blue Wings.
No, thank you, Ding Dong. Thank you so much. It's been great talking to you. And I hope that this discussion today might spark some ideas and creativity in people. And I suspect people who listen to your podcast are already interested in the wide world and in helping others. So I'm really happy to be part of this. Thank you.
Yeah, no. And for me, it's great. It's first time I speak about topics around street kids and around trafficking. So it's a great, I don't like this word, but great addition to all the different social environmental issues I've been speaking about. But yeah, for me, it's really, really wanted to hear more about Blue Dragon. So yeah, super, super happy.
Thank you. It's really been nice talking to you.
Congrats for listening until the end of this episode. Of course, to best support Lifeline, you can share this episode to 2 of your friends and subscribe to the next episodes on any platform. See you next time!